All right, well, thank you, everybody. I tend to talk really, really fast, so if I need to slow down a little bit, just let me go back and repeat it, and I'll slow down. So, a couple things. In that white folder, you would have a copy of the PowerPoint presentation here, and there's some URLs later on. If you want those emailed to you, there's going to be a sheet here that says Department Funding Notes. So if there's anything I say today, you'll say, hey, I'd love to have a copy of that or some example, I can send those out to you. Just put your email department and what you'd like. Next week, a gentleman by the name of Chad will send it out to you. And then the other important part, there is a data sheet here as we go along, if you guys know or don't know, some projects you're looking to get funded. The need to have was the everyday essentials, SCBA's turnout gear, fire engines, lighting, fans, etc. Nice to have would be stuff like maybe some training stuff, UTV, etc. Again, name and department. The important part about this, it goes into a drawing for a free hydro nozzle from Hen, a new nozzle, their newest nozzle. So this will be put into a drawing for that nozzle as well. And then I'd like to go ahead and get started. My information's on here. I got some cards here too when you leave. A little history about me. I've been doing grant writing since pre-9/11 from my own local department. My county's only 35,000, so is that as well. So about $22 million. So I'm good at finding stuff. That's kind of where my passion's at. So funding, logistics, et cetera, et cetera. So anytime, email me, text me, let me know where you're from. And you had something, hey, we're trying to find funding for this, I'll reach out and help you as much as I can. Those things. So again, you take a card, my phone number's here. Started in fire service in 1988, retired last year, September, as a fire chief. I was 14 years as fire chief. Before that, along with that, I worked corrections for a while, retired out of there too as well. So kind of have a wealth of different things going on in the world. I would tell you that the exciting part about it, there's a lot of funding out there. There is a lot. There's more than we can grasp. I know that's hard to believe, but there is. There's a ton of Rob, Peter, Pay, Paul type grant applications that you can help make a project. Maybe it might take 2 or 3 sources, but we just need to prove the word is sustainable. That we can put all these together and make it happen. So that's important. I would tell you that anybody who's involved at the federal level in your department's probably got an email over the last, say, 120 days saying this grant's been funded, has been either funded or the application has been frozen. But the second email you'll get from the grantors is that a federal judge in D.C. has held up that executive order because the funding's already been legislated. So you can't do executive order to take away legislation. So this year that's going to be awarded this fall for AFG. If you have an application in, next year's application are fully funded. So don't say like there's no use, all the money's gone. As we go through this, we're going to talk about we need to step away from AFG and SAFER a little bit as we go, because that money, regardless what just happened, is basically going down and down and down. 400 million last year, 360 million this year. And if you think about that, is that a lot of money? Seems like a lot of money, but that only basically funds 2,000 grants a year annually, and a majority of that initial money goes to your state ran facility. So they get a chunk of that money right off the top, so that's even less for us. As we go, we're going to give you some pointers how to get a few more points on AFG for you to stick out, all those things. So going through the PowerPoint here, this again, my contact information. And the next slide is, so these are just some, Nick Dingus is the owner of Dingus Fire. I mean, he has me out doing this. I have my own little sales area, but I'm going out trying to help departments get to where they need to get. These are all just some of his values. I would tell you, you need to have a mission and a vision for grant funding. What is separate from what your department is? I mean, we all know the department's going to say we're going to do the best to take care of our people in a nutshell, right? But you guys need to come up with something that's a catchphrase for your own department. What is your purpose in raising funds? The state of Colorado and the U.S. government probably will never ask you that, but a lot of these private things we're going to talk about in Fortune 500 companies, they want to know what your vision is and what your mission is to seek some of these grant fundings. Those are just some logos there. We can switch on to the next one. So for example, as Amy said here, SuperVac wants to try to help you raise some funds, and the goal is the major reason is to help fire departments do their job, be there safely, all that. B is that hopefully that through their help, you'll help with their products. A lot of these other manufacturers, if you go to them, that's on that sheet. You go to their website. They have individuals that help you with different solutions, try to get some funding. So this time we're going to go around and start right over here. these two ladies a little bit about where you're at, grant funding, grant writing experience. Have you got any grants lately for your department? And what your department consists of? Is it fire and EMS? Is it career, not career, et cetera?
Me to start?
Yep, yep,
Oh,
yep,
sure.
yeah.
Okay, my name is Caitlin Trulove. I'm the Public Education and Risk Reduction Manager with Poudre Fire Authority. I've been there for 3 years. We're a combination department, and since I work in community outreach, most of my grant writing has been in that space, so I've won some car seat grants and other small funding, but nothing major yet.
Okay. All right. Biggest problem in the fire service?
Where to start? For me, it's helping our firefighters understand the value of prevention.
Okay. Okay.
So I'm Haley Brock, I'm the budget analyst at Poudre Fire Authority. Been there for almost 3 years now. So I've helped with some grants. I haven't drafted the language for any of them. I've done more of the financial guidance on them and then the managing and record keeping of them after the fact. To answer your question on biggest problem, I think from a financial standpoint, because that's what I'm in, I feel like inflation has run all on its own and it's hard to keep up when we're tax funded and limited in that capacity.
Okay. Ma'am?
I'm Andrea Smith. I'm a finance manager for Loveland Fire Rescue Authority. Similar finance model to PFA. I've been there just about 6 months. We have submitted some grants while I've been there. Again, similar to the finance piece, not much of the writing. In previous points in my career, I handled grant making, the finance piece of grant making, so I've seen it from both sides. So that's good, and the problem I see in fire service is funding and the model that our department is based on is the funding is difficult for everything.
Okay. All right, thank you. Sir?
Tom Joyce, I'm with Cimarron Hills Fire. Now, I've only been there 2 years, but I got going on just that over 39 years. I did retire as a fire chief. And I was supposed to be retired in 21, and then they called me back. I went down to the city of Fountain as interim for 10 months as their fire chief, and then got called up to where I'm at right now. I've been in all the chief positions, but actually I like this, and I like what you said, Caitlin, and I like this prevention that I think is the problem. But again, so we are paid department. We do have part-timers. We used to have volunteer, but we went away from that. We went to part-timers because today's world, volunteers don't really work much anymore, not like they did back in the 70s and 80s. It's just hard to get them in there with all the requirements we have. Grant writing success. So I did DOD for 29 years, so my grant writing is going to be a different kind of element, right? So my success in there is getting fire engines, getting training towers, that kind of stuff. But the way we did it in the DOD is vastly different. That's why I'm here today, is because how we do it out here in the municipals and the fire protection districts is completely different than the way I've been doing it for 30 years, right? So that's why I'm here, because I'm like, all right, how do we do this justification? I could write it the Army way, but I'm sure it's not going to make it. So going back to basic problem in the fire service, yes. Now that I've been in all the positions, and what I'm seeing is it's that fire prevention. Doing the sampling with the community, is the messaging out there, the importance of it, because one, it's operations is the reactive, and this is the proactive branch. And with that said, is that you can quantify on the operations side of the house. You can actually go in there and say, I made this many saves, I did that. It's qualitative when it comes to the fire prevention area, so it's getting that education out there.
Good. So just a couple of things we're going to clear up before we go to the next slide is, so if and everybody sound like they had the right answer, never feel like you have too much money in reserves to apply for grants. It's how you disseminate what you have over here to fix the problem is usually higher than this. You guys talked about inflation. In the fire service, about 14% ballpark. I'm not 100% financial wizard, but about 14%, you know, cost of goods. But our growth of income in the fire service is not growing that fast, right? And we're already in the deficit side when we look at replacement. The other part about, you know, again, funding is, again, we have to get really good, and I said this earlier, we have to get really good at the private foundations, the small ones, right? And I think the low-hanging fruit Again, we feel a lot better about ourselves and how our applications look, if we start getting some awards at the low-hanging fruit, insignificant maybe, but significant enough to build some things to, we talked about, you guys talked about prevention. There's some, you have, it's coming, you guys will have Casey's gas stations here eventually, but Bucky's the same thing, it's just a different brand. They have a grant program. So again, are you 501(c) as well? Is your association 501(c)? Because that's going to help you, right? Some of them, like some places, either you got to be government or 501(c), but there's other organizations out there. So do you have that in place, that your local firefighters association has that in place, that you have another way of getting revenue that maybe locks you up because you're just a government? So think about those things. Prevention's huge, right? And again, for years we've done fire prevention. Have we really done any EMS prevention, right? Have we done enough for, stop the trips and falls over people's rugs and et cetera, et cetera? Have we done that? And is there a source of money for that? And the answer is yes. We need to be looking at both fire and EMS prevention and looking at those stats. So when we look at prevention, we need to throw something back at these people and saying, this is why we need it, right? National stats are always 1 or 2 years behind because of reporting. State numbers are usually about the same thing because they're getting numbers in for their NIFRS reports. But do we have some local stats that you guys can go draw upon? I had lunch with Amy today and Demi, and one thing I always tell people, if you call me tomorrow with a problem, I always want to hear in your own words what the problem is. That way, again, so what's our problem in prevention, right? Probably not doing enough, just like this gentleman said here, right? I experienced a house fire about a block from my house, and I responded directly when I was fire chief. 2 kids trapped upstairs. And it's pretty scary, right? When you're going to be first on the scene, they're already down. So when they're in the ambulance, they have CO poisoning, all the things going along with being in that environment. Went over and talked to them before they left. I said, "How do you know you get out the window?" Well, because that fire trailer. They told us to open the window and crawl down. So I mean, that to me, that gave me the value of that program. I mean, again, otherwise would they know to open the window and crawl down like they said? They just said right out of well from 2 different agencies says the fire safety trailer. So are we doing enough of that? And again, FP&S, again, federal funded grant, right? So have we done a lot with that? Have we done anything to apply for that? Do you guys know that that's available? FP&S? It comes out of the same fire prevention and safety.
Okay.
So for example, if you do a fire extinguisher prop for one of your training things, it can be clean. That way you're not doing all this stuff, and whether inside or outside doesn't matter. So if you do one of those projects, a couple of things you're looking at. You got to make sure you understand what their funding source says, because you might say, I'm going to go to grade school and teach them how to use a fire extinguisher, but in their language, there's a certain age bracket where they want you not to do it, and they just need to be basically escape, right? So again, at a certain age, so make sure you read that before you do it, because you might get kicked out because you're going to say you're going to go to the middle school and teach them how to use it, when it's really junior high or above in their language last year, right? So it's going to be the kids who are that age, guys and gals. So those things.
The question there, because that's actually some good points that you're making, because I know like the city of College Springs, they no longer do the propane ones, they only do the Bullocks electronic ones now.
Yeah.
And that's a liability thing. But then going back in, if you go to their programs, it is like everything you just said, they only go to a certain age group, and then they don't do that for lower age groups. I don't agree with that, but, and I'll give you an example of that, but my point is this, is like, so when it comes to the electronic one and the propane one, which one is the more successful? Seeing that there are some cities that are going away from the propane, even though all my businesses now, we probably teach over a dozen propane ones. Although I don't have one, I have to borrow all of them.
Right. Well, I would say that the fire industry, if they're not going clean, they should be going clean. Our jobs in the fire service, and you ladies too in the finance office, to get firefighters from 21 to 55 without cancer, right? So again, so that's clean. We want the clean look, and the reason why the clean is because a couple of things. We're shooting out bicarbs, right? It's irritant, right? And number 2 is we don't know exactly. Again, 10 years from now, they're going to say, burning LP and anhydrous, all those things that we smelled as samples when you did fire training around anhydrous, you had to get a whiff of it. We don't know exactly what they're going to say 10 years, just like PFAS, right? The big word PFAS right now. So again, PFAS to put turnout gear together in a PA. So I think you look at the clean, and the nice thing about it is when we talk about clean, so who has a training tower here? Okay, is it dirty or clean? Okay, so you burn stuff in it. So a lot of people, a lot of larger communities, like you have a lot of large communities represented here, they're offering a clean facility as well. So it's scientifically and it's acceptable form of training when you go back and look at OSHA, when you go back and look at standards, it's giving you difficulty levels on these electronic panels. That's how better these things are today. So it's going to give you the same gauge of knocking out the fire. Again, if you don't do what's supposed to be done, as far as all the sequences, it will not let you pass it. And they're movable. So if you have four different containers, you can move them, for example. The idea about this is two things. One is guys and gals on duty don't have to be deconned afterwards. So if they have a busy firehouse, they probably don't get trained because they said, by the time we get in there and get out, we're going to be deconned, we're going to catch a call, right? So you don't have to decon in between because it's clean. Number two is OSB, we're usually burning, right? Anybody ever seen what OSB is? It's glue, glued in wood chips, right? It's producing heavy, dense smoke, not black, but heavy, dense wood smoke. Again, those are things that we're bringing back into the firehouse, back into their fire engine when we're trying to keep those clean. So I think you're going to see a lot bigger push for clean, and even in grants. That they want to see some clean facilities. Again, trying to prevent the other C word, the first C word was COVID, right? We dumped a lot of money at that, so now we're back on the track of trying to, at least get cancer as less of an issue for firehouses, fire departments. And when we talk about stats, so if anything we're going to do, and your guys are down the road for grants, for example, we just talked about training. Firehouse Subs is a great program for what you just talked about, for getting your own props. But going forward, we got to look at how we're going to sustain firefighters' health. Right, 21 to 55 is what I use. So when we talk about the number one goal for some of these grants, number one goal is firefighter safety. When you look at an AFG application, we're going to talk about that. That's the money that's kind of sliding down. It came at post 9/11. So we got to make sure that we need to tell them that this project's going to improve firefighter safety. And maybe you have some stats. Maybe, at Loveland, there's 2 firefighters out on medical right now for cancer, or 2 retired early, or God forbid, had a couple of circum. Those are stats that affect you, and that's why I say the statement of effect we're going to talk about later is so important. Is, how does it affect your department? Not the nation standards, not the state standards, not your regional standards, how does it affect your own department, in your own words, and those are very important. Because people like us in this room will be reading those applications one day, if they're an AFG grant, a fire grant. So we kind of get it, right? We get how this affects us. But on the same thing, when we talked a little bit about language over there, we got to make sure too, when we're talking to non-fire base people that are going to offer money, that we dummy down the language a little bit. And I don't mean that they're ignorant, because they won't understand what a thermal imaging camera is. They don't understand ITLS, BTLS, all those other things that we use, BCAP, DKLS. They won't understand, a flow pattern, like we're going to use a supervac fan to help us once we get exhibited a path for the fire to keep it away from the other firefighters. They won't understand that. So we got to break it down to things that are very simple that they would understand. Because again, example, power companies have grant funding. So ours is ComEd, Exelon. I put in for 2 cameras. This has been a while ago when I was fire chief. We got awarded. The CEO of ComEd went to table to table, asked people about their projects, and he went, "Oh, I can't believe our committee bought 2 Polaroid cameras for $8,000 each." Okay? He didn't know. So I explained it, and he changed his keynote, saying that he's very proud his company bought some cameras to help rescue firefighters and rescue civilians on those days when they were needed. So that's kind of that little bit. So the next slide, help us help them. Help us in this room, help our civilians and their guests. And when you look at that, so have you come up with something really simple? Because again, they're going to ask several applications. We're going to talk about, what is your mission or vision of this grant funding? And I would tell you another key word, just kind of keep in mind, can you sustain it? Because again, Casey's, for example, they want to know where you're getting, if you're asking them for $2,000 for a $5,000 supervac fan, where are you going to get your other $3,000 from? Because they want to make sure they give you $2,000, that you have the other money kind of already in your flow, that you get it for that project is going to be sustained and accomplished. So kind of can remember sustainability, because not everything. So everything has a stopgap. For example, Firehouse Subs. Anybody here applied for it? Successful?
No.
Okay. So it has $40,000 cap. So example, if this gentleman here was asking for $45,000 worth of training products, which is a very good project for Firehouse Subs, there were a lot of them. Where are we going to get the other $5,000 from? It could be a match from the Firemen's Association. It could be we're going to go to Buc-ee's. I see they give out grants to help communities. It could be Firehouse Subs gives you 40, and maybe Walmart gives you their 5. Those are things. How would you sustain the rest to get that project done without cutting the project? That's the saddest part of the day, when people tell me they had to remove stuff to get to where they need because they didn't get enough funding. So, all right. Next slide is talking about the 99 problems you guys talked about. Most of it was money, financial, whatever it is. We're going to talk a little bit about DOD. That's going to solve some of your problems later on. That they have a stopgap program available for your local municipalities. And then, again, I've done about 115 of these. Everybody's money and manpower for the people that've been in the fire service for a while. you used to have 2 jobs, 1,000 people apply for them, and now you have, 25 people apply for 20 jobs. That's flipped for some reason. Nobody knows why people don't want to be in the fire service anymore. So it's kind of different. So, and, sometimes other people have a little bit, the political, there's, issues between the city manager and the district trustees, et cetera, et cetera. But they're very seldom as that. So on the next slide, we talk about, as you can see these slides, we have to be out in front of, in front of our people, our public, right? Survey this room. We've got 3 different communities represented here. Does everybody here think that your public knows what your needs are? Do you think you're 100% covered by federal or state funding, that they have no worries? Because the answer is no, right? I can tell you, I experience this. I could say here, if Amy would let us stay here to midnight tonight, I could tell you story after story after story how fire departments had a need. Somebody in their community had something that could fix the need. They just didn't know there was a need. I'm talking about building new firehouses. I'm talking about buying new engines. I'm talking about buying as simple as helmets and boots. Does your community know? How can we get the word out to the community? Town halls, yep, open houses. But make sure the right people are there, because again, make sure the right people are there that know the story. I encourage everybody, if Amy would let me write on the wall, we'd start a list here, but I encourage everybody to have a whiteboard just for what we're talking about here today, for grant funding, right? Anybody here ever put a school lunch thing on their refrigerator, right? Because that way they know every day what's going on, their kid's gonna like it or not. Very similar. If we walk by this every day, we'll never forget what we're looking for. And then what happens is, like this gentleman's been chief of different departments over decades. He can bring them in and show his community, hey, here's some things we're looking to do. And maybe give an example why, right? Maybe there's only 2 people around in your community on a certain station, and how much more of a save and how much better stats will a person have for surviving if you had a CPR assist device for your first responding truck, right? How much better will things be if you can eliminate caustic gases without introducing more gases into a home with a battery operated fan? And again, he's been in the fire service for a few decades. A fan lasts forever, doesn't it? But we just changed the technology. We're no longer running it on gas, introducing CO and other toxic stuff into the firefighters' work area. And the other part is we don't have extension cords stretching everywhere for people to trip and fall and not get what we want. So technology keeps changing, but we don't have the funding to keep up. So how do we do that? So again, get out in front of your people. I have a couple examples coming down the road here from that, but get out in front of your community, let them know what your needs are, right? Again, over lunch with Amy, we have our fire trucks never look dirty and rusty in a parade, do they? Even though they're 20 years old, the public thinks it's brand new. They don't see it's a 2001, 1988 reserve engine out there, whatever it is. But make sure we get out in front of our people. So I can't stress that enough. He said, the town halls, be out in front of your people and let them know that whiteboard exists. Anybody ever had a Chrysler in their lifetime? Chrysler vehicle? A company made in Dixon, Illinois, Borg-Warner Illinois used to make chips for Chrysler back in the day when Chrysler was a big deal, a lot of cars. They make chips for everybody now. They had a safety fund, and we put basically some needs out there through social media, which we'll show you one here in a minute. They basically said we had $19,000 in a fund that we didn't know what to do with. We had $99,000 in a safety fund because nobody got injured over multiple years. We didn't know there was a need. And they look at that and saying, now I help the fire department out. They can help more than just our employees. They can help our whole area. So they didn't know there was a need. Now it's repetitive. They come every year, hey, what can we do? What can we do? So, and in your community organizations, you can go out and offer a CPR class or a fire prevention thing and a car seat. At the same time, use that plug to say, hey, we're trying to do this. And we're out in front of people. Make sure we tell them there's a plug that we need stuff. So,
We just did that, actually. We hosted one of our CPR classes at one of our oldest stations, so we could say to the community, look, the station could use some work.
That's good. All right, the next slide, again, he'll understand this, being out in the service every day. Manpower is a critical point for when you get mutual aid and auto aid. 20 years ago, they would send you extra, even if you didn't ask for it. Now, they're sending barely what you asked for if they do get able to send it. So unless you live in a really, really different area of the United States, everybody's suffering from responders. You used to get 12 from the department, you might get in 6. And the time of day, based on the time of day, it could be even worse. So we have to be able to, as fire service, and you guys are representing some of the financial side, we have to be able ready to sustain ourselves for a little bit longer than what we used to have to, which we're not comfortable. So by saying that, we always depended on XYZ to be our RIT team. They're delayed because of staffing. We're relying on XYZ to be the second source for extrication tools on a major incident. They're delayed now because of manpower, staffing, making sure the home's covered first. A lot of departments in my area, they used to just send people on their career crews. Now that the career crew has to hold till they got 3 confirmation that 3 guys or gals are coming in for the community still going to be protected. I get it. That's what they have to do. So going to that, so when we look at justification, if you have new extrication tools, new cameras, new RIT equipment, et cetera, can we justify applying for a grant to get more? Because it's new? You have all new stuff? The answer is yes. Because we're going to explain this need. For example, if you are in Loveland and you go to assist Fort Collins on a major incident, and they put you in staging just in case there's another call, and you brought your backup or your second engine that doesn't have extrication tools on it, or your squad because you left that in your community to protect your community, and all of a sudden Fort Collins gets an incident out here on the interstate, they want you to go because their guys are tied up in a structure fire. You can't respond really because you have no tools. So those are all the things that we can justify this all day long. Again, the additional tools. RIT's very important too. If you know the stats on RIT, firefighters get lost or go through an emergency within a few minutes of the incident, not 20 or 30 minutes after everybody's there and you got a full boatload of people. Do you have enough cameras and enough RIT equipment on your incoming initial rigs to sustain that? So think about that. When you look at thermal imaging cameras, do you have 2 on 1 engine? Do you have 1 on each engine, right? Because if you have 1 on each engine, where's that? Probably with the guys who are lost or incurred an emergency. So again, we can justify all day long a second camera, right? We can justify more scene lighting, interior lighting, et cetera, to improve firefighter safety. So again, just don't think you're limited based on what your inventory is. We can justify that, so to improve firefighter safety. Okay, next slide. Only I'm pointing out here is those are examples of what things you can be awarded for, right? You can do extrication equipment, turnout gear, breathing air, SCBAs, training, brush fire equipment, TICs, RIT, EMS equipment. The problem is, and he was a chief before, once you receive those new goods, what are we worried about? Day 2, what are we worried about day 2? Replacing them. What's that going to look like? I mean, St. Paul, Minnesota has 450 guys and gals in our department for turnout gear. They get a good grant for half of that. It's great, but they have to start thinking how they're going to replace that when it gets 10 years old, right? Because we can't control that. So do we have another initial plan how we start replacing this stuff? Again, you get thermal imaging cameras, it's great. Back in the day, it was brick on a stick or a helmet camera. They only looked for basically trying to find the fire. Now they look for this relevant temperature because we're looking for flashover, et cetera, et cetera. So again, what's the new technology going to be 5 years from now? Okay? Extrication equipment, same way, right? We used to be all corded. Now it's 90-10, 90 battery, getting away from, you know, again, the fumes, the cords to trip over. And the longer you're on the highway, the more you're a target. So extrication tools went battery. They went, for example, when you look at a battery platform, you can do extrication tools, you can do all the hand tools, sawzalls, all that, even to the fans. SuperVac offers a couple of different, if you guys are, you know, believe Milwaukee Red, they have a fan that runs all the Milwaukee battery. That way you don't have to have 1,000 different batteries to pick from. If you believe in DeWalt, same thing. So kind of remember that when you're looking at cache of tools, are you including that everything will be the same? Make it really simple for the guys and gals at 3 o'clock in the morning. It all's working on the same battery platform. And we can justify that based on sustainability, right, and training. So again, new car, you drive it all a lot, next day they have something better, right? Plus your car's already depreciated on nothing. Same thing with turnout gear, all this stuff and inflation. So just remember, we have to start thinking, even when we get awarded today, how we're going to sustain that at the end of life. Okay. Next slide is talking about, and so far I really haven't talked a lot about AFG, right, or SAFER or FP&S. We have to get better about the low-hanging fruit. And there's more low-hanging fruit out there than I could ever myself even go after. And again, so are we doing enough to get that low-hanging fruit to make projects? Has anybody ever asked for $1,000 before in a grant application? $1,000, right? There's a lot of $1,000 places to get $1,000, right? 4 or 5, easy. The time I've been here, we can already have probably 5 or 6 of those applications done. They're easy, right? So, but concentrate on non-federal money. I'll tell you, if you're a, you know, a nerd at budget time, you watch the Senate hearings, you see what they, you know, those people have to go through to get their funding, et cetera, to make better things. Last year, U.S. Forestry got a bump in their money. AFG did not. SAFER did not. The EMS funded through mental health, they got a huge bump. So we're going to talk about those later, a little bit later. But so make sure you start looking at those things. And I can't stress enough that that you look at the funding source every year, federal and state, and see which way it's going, because that's going to set the tone probably for the next 10 years, probably the next decade, before things change. The next one is that we're going about social media. This trailer is about $150,000. About 99% of it was funded by local dollars after the fact. We had a tornado. Put it on a little bit of a cold wash on social media, not technical, just hey, things went like this, communication was terrible. To fix the problem, we got to figure out how to get communications better. So put that project on there, and like you said, 99% of it was funded by local dollars, by local companies, manufacturers, et cetera. They wanted to do something. And we did it close to the target, right? When the tornado hit, after we got it through a week, all the search and rescue, all that stuff, that's when we used it. Same with the next slide. That's my home department before I retired. Same thing, communications. I did that. Actually, this was funded by United Way. We weren't a normal receiver of funds. They had excess funds, but they didn't know that project existed. They felt it would help the whole county. So, again, so let's talk about CPR here a little bit. The sad part about in the world, there's no direct funding for AEDs. It's crazy. Again, this is another social media project put on there. I had a police chief from a community died, 45, had a heart attack. First two deputies on scene because they're, you know, a lot more relevant, closer to some of these in the ambulance or the fire engine. Didn't have an AED with him because there's only one on the sergeant. He was over in interstate. So the sheriff came to me and asked, hey, can you help us find funding for a few more? Put that out on social media. Again, in 90 days, had $60,000. A lot more AEDs we wanted or anticipated. So, but now every squad car has one. So, Mississippi County. The next one is know your regions. What do you have that's kind of unique and special to your regions? What committees do you have? What do you have? Lions Club? Do you have Kiwanis? What do you have for organizations? Have you been there? Have you been to one of their meetings? They're always looking for a subject. They get tired of talking themselves. You know, is it fire prevention? Is something about CO detector? Is it about smoke? You know, new smoke detectors. You know, the 10 years doesn't mean you have to stop checking the battery. You know, testing them. So have you been there to put on a presentation? Again, while you got their ear, tell them you have a project. Because they all like to have a little bit of publicity, right? The Lions Club did this for us. Either a tool, piece of equipment, a prevention piece of equipment, or there were some instructors to do something. Did they have an opportunity and might not know that you had a need for something like that? So again, we have drones in our area. We use them not frequently, but when we do, it's serious. Most of that funding, all of it, matter of fact, for 2 of them in an underwater drone, all came from local organizations. Going on the next slide, you know, it's basically a Zodiac boat. We have flooding as well. Again, organizations, after they got to come in and visit you, and you get to talk to them and say, hey, you know, basically shake some hands, say thank you for what you did, show them what you bought them, show them how it works. Quickly tell them you have another need, right? Hey, we're getting ready to do this, okay? All right, the next slide is for anybody know what, in April, it gets all the training emails. National Pipeline Authority sends out an email to every municipal and district fire department that shows what pipelines go under their area and what companies they are. Enbridge is a big one in the country. I just looked, there's 5 or 6 communities by town listed on there eligible for Enbridge right now. I don't know where they're at, but you guys go to enbridge.com, click on the grant, look at search Colorado. There's 5 or 6 of them. You guys might know what those towns are. They're eligible for funding for Enbridge. So, but the thing is with this, there's other pipelines listed as well. So is your pipeline have some grant funding? So that's, again, a quick, easy source. The nice thing about it, most of these have no tiers, which means they don't put turnout gear above fire prevention equipment. They don't put turnout gear above operational equipment such as hose nozzles, fans, ticks. So again, they have no tiers. So whatever you can paint as a priority to them, they'll go with it. So again, this is from their website. They have a very robust. And the next slide as well is from their website. They're not trying to hide they fund fire department stuff, right? Okay. Who has rail in their area? Rail, okay. Do you know who they are?
Burlington Northern.
Okay. The BNSF, right? They have a grant fund. You guys know that? So, yep, they do.
Great Western.
Yeah, yeah. UP, I see UP's in this area too as well. I don't know exactly, maybe not your guys' communities, but UP has a robust grant funding. I would tell you that I would search, again, for the pipe rails that you have in your area. And if you have an intermodal close to you, or the trains do all the changing, UP is usually there as well, so check for some of these rail. You know, you have Canadian, you have Norfolk Southern. I will tell you, they have very deep pockets and are very committed to the fire service. Example, everybody remember a couple of years ago what happened in Ohio, Pennsylvania / right? The spiller pay ordinance, which you guys might be familiar with that, it was $250,000 for the equipment and manpower they sit there for the incident. The next day, they wrote a check for $250,000, but they wrote an additional $750,000 to help upgrade the fire department. $1 million for a very small rail company. Again, politically, probably right to do. They didn't have to do it, but $750,000 into a very rural fire department is a huge injection of funds, and that funding is out there. So just think that all these rails we just talked about, they have that type of funding to help interject, solve a problem. You know, talking to Amy, you know, how robust is Colorado's program versus other states? You know, I'm from Illinois, I'm neighbors to Indiana. They have different funding, but the thing would be, as example, for legislators, your local legislators and your local state senators, you need to drop dime on them once in a while. Like say, hey, did you know Indiana has this program? Because what they're looking for is somebody that already wrote the legislation, so it's easier in this state, or any state, because it fly through rules committee, because it already flew through some other state's rules committee. So it's going to have 14 readings at a legislative session. So if there's things you're looking for, again, example, in Indiana for departments with low funding, they buy 3 air packs, 3 sets of gear every year. They're putting a training facility within 45 minutes of every fire station, so they don't have to worry about going to the state facility. So those things. Iowa has teeth to a burn ban, so if farmers are out burning when they're told not to burn, but they light it up because there's no teeth, Iowa has a really robust burn ban to help protect firefighters' safety and civilian safety. So those things. But for example, verify your state funding. And I can't tell you enough how important it is, if you know your local representatives and your local senators, send them a letter. Everything is on a whiteboard, say we got a long laundry list of priorities. Reason being is they have people that work on their aides or handlers that can go to your state DHS, your state EMA office, and your state DNR office and say, hey, do we have funding for this stuff? Because they want to be popular too. They want to be the guy that says, hey, I helped this community get that money. They want those things. And I think they have, generally, most of them have a real vested, because they live there in your communities, et cetera. So again, verify the state funding. Make sure you're writing a letter every year to your state. Around April is the best time I recommend, because that's when they're doing appropriations for their budgets, but make sure you let them know. Okay. Next slide. I'm just showing you here. This is a project with multiple grants. It's a brush truck, right? You guys see a brush truck before? So this funding didn't come from one source. It came from multiple sources. So how you build something sustainable. Okay. This truck has some different lighting. This truck has some different rescue tools on it. It has a brush unit. It has some wildland fighting fire tools. This money was funded through DNR programs, 2 of them, and a local landfill committee. You guys have landfills here? I think I've seen a few. Our landfills look like the mountains over there. Everything is flat until you see the landfill, then it's flat again. So, but anyway, they have tipping fees that you get basically like a tax, but it's based on tonnage from these companies that bring the garbage in there. Usually it's ran by the local government or the county government under a solid waste committee, and they don't have to answer usually to the county board. So they have a thing of cash. That's how this brush truck was bought. Again, who has landfills in their fire response area? You guys, okay. Have you guys been approached by any of the people that's planning on getting that methane out, the companies that's coming in to do that? They're coming. And what it is, during the last 4 years of the last president, he came up with a lot of green initiatives to try to get rid of some of that, because they identified methane as being one of the biggest issues for ozone and stuff like that. So they produce a lot of green credits for people companies that come in and get rid of the methane in old caverns, coal caverns, or landfills. So they put a plant right in your area. Chicago has several of them. They're ran in Texas, but they have one person working there a day, and emergencies all handled off-site, so it's not really a critical issue. They're pumping that gas off and making energy. Not very much. So the green credits is probably how this company stays in business, probably makes good profits, because they're getting these credits for X amount of gallons or PSI of how much stuff they get rid of. The nice thing about it, they want to be friendly to your fire service. So you need to let them know that you have a need. I had a sustainable project, and I asked for $6,000 when I met with the individual, and he pulled out a checkbook, and it wrote the check. I wish I would ask for more, but I was trying to hit the middle of the road. I was hoping for 3,000. So again, no government to deal with, no requirements to deal with, no tiers, just to let them know as far as the projects, what's priority or not. Are we in front of these people to do this? Second way is I've seen some solar panels. Do you guys have solar farms here? Okay. Are you guys sitting on the committee, zoning committee for those? I would, if you can, I would recommend you do. There's a reason why. A, it does affect firefighter safety. If you don't have enough egress on those roofs for firefighters to operate safely, it's a problem. So again, it's how much overlap can they have, et cetera, et cetera. Number two is, they might want to put a solar farm where the only way in and out is a farm entrance. Anybody know what I mean by a ranch entrance, farm entrance? Just a little tiny culvert. Can your big fire truck that's $500,000, $1 million go over that culvert safely? Probably not. Fire chief would probably have a fit, right? It's not good for the vehicle either. So how do we get out there when these things are going to burn? They will burn, just like everything else. Nothing's ever not going to burn. Probably going to have a UTV or a small utility pickup truck to do what it needs to do. And there's a certain product for firefighter safety you use for electrical fires on these panels. If you're on the zoning committee, they need your signature. So they might be responsible for providing equipment. Lee, Illinois, for example, I worked through the same thing with them. A small department. Before they got the chief's signature, they wrote a $42,000 check for a UTV, a skid unit, and that product. So are we taking care of ourselves? Because they're making the money. You're not making the money. So are they going to make sure they have provided everything to you to do that? So again, being on the zoning committee or having a fire department friendly person on that committee would help. But I recommend if you get somebody on the committee, it behooves you. Okay. All right, the next slide talks a little bit about DNR. They have a lot of programs. A lot of money comes from the federal level of forestry, pushed down to the state forestry, DNR. They have a few grants available for fire service. One's a volunteer fire assistance. Have you guys applied for that for your department?
I'm aware of this one.
Yeah.
But is that a stipulation right there, is under 10,000 over?
They're changing that number. It's going north. Yeah, so, but always apply. There's departments over 10,000 that gets a reward. There's usually more funding than lack of applications. So the other part, you have to have a memorandum of understanding signed. They provide the form basically saying if XYZ State Park was burning and that department called you for mutual aid or auto aid, would you respond? The answer is we're going to respond, right? So sign the form. So it's a good program. They have tiers, mainly radio equipment, firefighting equipment, et cetera, training, wildland gear, so available. The next slide talks a little bit about, there are two pictures on there for everybody familiar. The red one's a Polaris, the green one's a Gator. If you go to Polaris's website, just like SuperVac here, they have a click on the button. You go to somebody on their payroll. It tells you where in your area, based on your geographical area, might be ideas to apply for grants to fund a Polaris. The Gator has the U.S. Smokeless Tobacco settlement. So their requirement was to provide Gators to police and fire. They stopped during COVID because they gave them away during the Bass Pro regional shows. This application should be ready again, they said, at the end of this year. It's basically for a Gator, skid unit, and trailer. So, but it's, again, no match. Okay. While we're on that, you guys know that every state here has filed for an opiate settlement. Okay. It's if your state's attorney from your local county applied for it, they get so many dollars based on population back to the county. That money is available for you guys to apply for. There's no application, but you should be asking for it, because who deals with the opiate overdoses before anybody else? EMS and fire. And who dealt with COVID more than anybody else? EMS and fire. So did fire departments get their fair shake with COVID funding? The answer is no. They got leftover money, right? So make sure you talk to your state's attorney, find out about the opiate settlement. They've only got about 40% of the money so far. The money's coming from Bayer, Johnson & Johnson, et cetera, et cetera. And it's pushed down to the federal government. But that's money that, again, neighboring department by me, they just got an $80,000 12 lead, right? So again, do you have something that you need, has a little bit heavier price tag that maybe you can fit this? All right, the next slide is right there. So it's about NFPA, right? You guys familiar with NFPA has a ruling on turnout gear. It's 10 years and it's out. AFG priority is turnout gear this year, right? Next year, this fall, the next year's application, we don't know. For 2 years, they ran it as a medium. They didn't tell anybody. They didn't come out and broadcast. They just put in their notice of funding opportunities, something you have to read. So they're back to high priority. But every other kind of turnout gear that's available is high priority. So wildland gear, rescue gear, EMS gear, all high priority. So if you have a void there, Think about, oh, our turnout gear is great, but maybe we should do something else. Think about some of these other garments. For example, there's a lot of interstates here. It looks like there's a lot of grass fires or field fires, etc. You probably should be wearing a different garment for those type of fires rather than your structural gear. Structural gear was never made to do barbs, walking across these fields, et cetera, et cetera. It was a shower test and a flame test, right? And it's, number one, it affects firefighter safety because it's fatiguing. Basically it gets firefighters exhausted, fatigued, dehydrated. And then the other part is, are we increasing our exposure to cancer by making a firefighter wear that garment for something they don't have to wear it for? So I'm not saying they can't wear their turnout gear for every call that requires it, but is there an option to take them out of that gear at least one call a day, one call a week, where they're wearing something more suitable? I'll hear on an accident on the interstate, do you need turnout gear? You need rescue gear. That same set could be dual. They have dual certification, can be wildland. So that same field next to it burning later on, wear that. Again, chances of getting cancer from grass is probably zero, right? It's an irritant. So those are all high priorities when you start about thinking about, hey, what can we apply for AFG for? And with AFG, just so you know, you can apply for 2 projects under one application. You can apply for PPE, you can apply for equipment. So you can apply for 25 sets of rescue gear and hose, nozzles, fans, lighting, etc. on the other application. You might get them both awarded. You might only get 1 awarded. You might get 0 awarded. They don't score against each other, so it's an extra opportunity because you've done already a lot of the work for the application. So all you're going to change is what the benefit is, right, of this versus that, and what your statement of effect is, which we'll go over. Okay. So going on to DOD, in case you didn't know, maybe you know, the federal GSA and DOD has a cash of equipment surplus. Doesn't matter what state you're from. I know you're pretty close to Wyoming here. I live in Illinois. I receive equipment from Kentucky. I receive equipment from Missouri. I receive equipment from Wisconsin, different bases, military bases. DOD and federal government both have fire departments. Some are contracts, some are actually are part of the membership. So federal government rotates their fire engines every 5 years. Their squads every 5 years, their trucks 5 years. So and I'm not saying it's not brand new, but will be something better you have in reserve, and it's free, and it's been well maintained. But everything else you do, fire and EMS and rescue-wise, they have. They're doing the same job. They're just doing a more restricted little area. Fermilab is in Illinois. They split their first atom in the world. They have Buffalo running on the property. Their budget every 5 years, they replace everything. They don't leave the base. There's a little tiny Fermilab private government base where they split atoms. Right now they're sending a light to China under the ground. I don't know what they're doing. Argonne National Laboratory. So again, these big laboratories that need fire protection and EMS protection. So again, just that's another way as a stopgap. It's not truly funding, but I can tell you, federal government does some funding things. They might not move equipment. They might buy new. So when you're looking at, are you looking at for new gym equipment, et cetera, et cetera. FBI office might be closing in Milwaukee, but moving to some other town. They buy new. They have contracts to buy new. The old stuff they give to this program. So this program is easy to get into. You have a contact through your state DNR. I don't have Colorado on this list, but I can get it for you. You want it, just email me. But like I said, it's a good program to work through. It's free, hassle-free. UTVs, some trailers, etc. Again, this trailer here we use for different models, but had 0.01 hours on the generator, so it's not used wherever they bought it for. So again, federal surplus program can bring a lot of things to you. There's a couple pages of contacts. I don't have Colorado there, but if you contact me, I can get it for you unless you already know. Program is easy. It's like shopping on Amazon. You go turn it on every morning, look, see what's available, put in for it, get it. Okay. Down to the blue sheet. It's in your folder. So these are just some examples. This is not all inclusive. So that's why I say if you have a project, you have means through SuperVac with Amy of having people help you search for some of these identities. You also have myself available. But you have Corvita, which is Pioneer. So if you guys have Monsanto, any of those grain facilities out here, they have grant programs available, right? Some of them they tell you they have to be ag safety related. So that being said, doesn't mean it only has to be used for ag incident. A gas meter, right, you need it for ag safety. A combi tool to get somebody's hand out of a corn picker, et cetera, et cetera. Things to move fresh air. Again, when you look at somebody who might want to went into one of these tanks to clean it out. Amy, do you guys sell something to help improve the ventilation in a tank or underground?
We have confined space, so small nanos, there's explosion proof.
Yep. So again, to buy that equipment for if you have somebody going in one of these tanks that goes down the Blue Canary effect, right? Pretty soon you have 2 or 3 people. Again, we have supply some rich, oxygen-rich, good air. So these are things, again. Wind farms, solar farms, talked a little bit about that. I've seen some wind farms off to the west. I don't know if it affects you guys, but sometimes based on their corporation, they have some funding as well. We talked about landfills and methane gas. Utility companies, check your utility companies and see if they have funding. Go to their URL, contact your local person that represent them. Where I'm at, they have a grant called the Mayor's Caucus. You don't think it doesn't even sound like it even funds anything, but that's what it is. So they fund departments, EMS, fire, police, on request. Anybody have American Water here yet? It's probably coming to your surrounding departments, because what it is, they make contracts with several municipalities. They have 1 or 2 water people certified. That way they don't have to worry about the guy leaving with his license and now they're down who they find. That way they have more of a protection than a bigger company. They give back to the companies they represent every year, fire projects. Insurance companies, find out who's in your area, see who their mutual are that backs them. Again, State Farm, anybody have State Farm in their area? Okay, the local, if they give you a $500 check, ask them to apply for corporate. A corporate does a 50-50 match. So you're looking for a project, like for instance, prevention, they'll buy into it. But you look at some of the other mutuals, you got Bradford Mutual, big company behind a lot of these other insurance companies. They have funding, they like the fire service. So Compeer Finance, anybody ever heard of it? Okay, they have a grant once a year, $4,000 or $10,000. Again, it's easy application. It comes out in August. So again, Hartford Fund used to be Fireman's Fund. They had a big elk on the advertisement. They do extrication equipment, not as much money, but reach out to your local in corporate grants. And so State Farm has 3 grant programs. Say one for highway safety. Every 3 years you can be awarded for that grant. You can apply every year. So again, there's money out there for highway safety, which is very important. I would tell you, if you don't keep a calendar, you keep one on your phone is great, but if you don't keep a paper calendar for 3 years, because we're going to talk about a lot of dates. Like you can apply for firehouse subs every quarter till you win. Then after that, you can apply for 2 years. Gary Sinise, you apply every quarter. Don't get awarded. You can apply again in a year. You can apply every quarter. So those are important dates we don't want to miss. Civic organizations, we talked about that. Putting a letter out to your community once a year. We'll go over that a little bit. Firefighter Charitable, my point is here, there's a lot of post 9/11 organizations still with some great money. Firefighter Charitable, no tier, right? It doesn't matter what you're asking for. So it could be something you couldn't find somewhere else that you want to deal with. There's that. Your box stores, right? Lowe, Menards. I've seen a couple Lowe's since I've been here. Have you been out to them to seek funding? Have you guys been successful? Walmart, yep. So Walmart. So your Lowe's, your Home Depot. Walmart has called the Spark now, but you can apply every quarter. Right? You don't have to be the exact one that sits in your fire response area. It could be a neighboring one. All I tell people is when you start picking these out, look for the ones that are most profitable. They give out based on profit for that location. So if you live in a little bit diverse area where they get robbed every day, don't apply that one. So I'm near Peoria. So Walmart. So make sure Walmart, again, it's an easy application. The hardest part about it is you have to go on the CyberNet website, and you have to prove that you are who you are, either do a document through IRS or something through the Secretary of State. But don't let a couple of days later you have the answer, and then you're good for life. So again, Walmart. Siren grant, what do you guys think that's for? Nope. It's too bad there's no money for sirens. It's terrible. But it's an EMS grant. So I have no idea. It's funded through substance abuse and mental health. It's on its 5th year. It's buried in the farm bill. It hasn't been cut. It hasn't been touched. Last year, you got a $20 million boost. So it's to help fund EMS tuition for people to become either EMTs or paramedics, or EMT then a paramedic. Also, it funds participant protection, which is their turnout gear, their boots, ballistic vests, et cetera, et cetera. It also does all their necessary onboarding costs that you would have. It has money in there for marketing. So if you want to have a company come and do social media reels, they're coming to do some reels to help, basically try to recruit people for fire and EMS. And it has money for equipment for substance abuse. So what is that equipment? Is it equipment that firefighters use every day on the ambulance? Yeah, it's a cardiac assist device. Somebody with an overdose might need CPR. Capnography to measure their O2 production. 12 lead monitors to measure what their heart rate's doing, et cetera, et cetera. gurneys to carry them on, stair chairs to move them on, right, in the tight spaces. So that money is all buried in this grant. It's $400,000 max for every 2 years. It's awarded by law September 30th. The application is March 28th by law. So a little bit better than EFG because EFG keeps pushing back. I would tell you the good thing about this grant is the only requirement you have to have is be on the ERA Commons login. If you don't already have one for your government, I'll send you a video how to do it. It's about an hour. It's painful. But it takes 3 to 5 weeks to get your number, so don't wait till February to do it. Do it early. Do it now. So, but it is a good grant for responder equipment, for training responders, and their protection. All right. FM Global. So you guys applied for that grant ever? So when you're looking at fire prevention, this would be a good one. Looking for fire prevention would be a good one. They like doing things for fire prevention, like doing things for fire pre-planning. So tablets and software. So again, fire prevention, smoke detectors, doing some of the other things you're going to be doing, maybe a prop. You can apply for that one every quarter. FM Global, if you don't know, they're the underwriters for most of these box stores and box warehouses you see popping up. They're doing those things. Kitty is out of Aurora, Illinois. They don't really have a grant program, but the nice thing they have something when you get out in front of people. They give you smoke detectors, CO detectors, and fire extinguishers. So go on there. They have a little request. That way at your open house, town hall, whatever it is, you can do those things. Casey, we talked about, like Buc-ee's, just a different logo. They have grants. Should be applying for those every year. The local managers usually don't know. So again, they don't know. They're given a cache of money, and here's the applicants that meet our standards in Bensonville. They pick who gets the money. And I can't behoove you enough. If you get a Walmart grant, take the fire engine there, call the manager, ask him if he's got kids, say, hey, we'll be there at 3 o'clock, every kid's there, we'll give them a ride. And do that check thing. They like that publicity and that buy-in. So pretty soon they'll be asking you, hey, do you have a project?
When you suggest places like Casey's where they're not in Colorado yet, do they still accept out of state?
You have to have a facility. You have to have a facility in your state, but you don't have to be in your town. So if you have one close, like Wyoming, I didn't see any. I mean, they stopped, but they're coming. They're on such a huge build plan. They're competing against everybody. So.
We need the breakfast pizza here.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So yeah, breakfast pizza. Yeah, so they're coming. So you have one. You're getting home to be in your community. So, and again, those managers don't know. Other regional food chains, what do you have? Have you looked at their websites and say, hey, do they have a grant program? And see, or there's always a contact us, say, do you have grant funding for this? Out by us, we have Hy-Vee. Hy-Vee has a program. Walmart has a program. So those are two of the bigger grocers. Does Kroger? I see Kroger, a lot of Kroger trucks around here. Does Kroger have a program? I mean, you can go on and find out. Firehouse Subs, I know you guys are all within the Firehouse Subs geographical area. It's 60 miles. They will consider outside that as well. It's coming up in July, the next round. They only take the first 600 applicants. So at 10 o'clock when that's ready to go, Central Time, you need to have everything on that little checklist. Have you guys been there to their checklist? Have all that ready and then submit. If you submit it before and would like me to review your application, I can review it, all that stuff. But it is very competitive because they only take 600 to read, and then after that they have funding. If you look at their website, they do like a lot of prevention stuff. They give out a lot of the Lion, Bullocks training systems from your vendor. Okay. We talked about the Mayor's Caucus. We're going out to your other power companies. And the other question is, have you guys reached out to your hospital foundations? They have deep checkbooks. The bigger the hospital, the bigger checkbook. So they have foundations. So have you reached out to them for any of these projects? Up by me, they bought 18, I call them geezer squeezers, but CPR assist device. They bought 18's not a cheap venture, but they did to improve the quality of CPR performed. Okay. The next couple of pages, I'm not going to go real in deep with them, but they're just a bunch of URLs. I have more than this. I would tell you that for the departments that have more volunteers paid on call, for example, this department here, Gary Sinise is a great opportunity to apply. So those things. But again, we have several pages there of URLs. I'm not going to go over all of them, but like I said, they're there. By any means, if you need a copy of this sent to you, I'll send it to you. If you guys don't have to type it. And then the next example I have is a community letter. Does your organization send out a community letter with their annual notifications for different things? It's your city halls and district and county know how to do this already, but it's basically every door delivery. Simple to do. They give you a number to put on your envelope for the postage. But these are great for communities to send out something a little bit about fire prevention. And also put in there about recruiting. Maybe you guys have a test date for career firemen on July 19th next year, whatever the case may be, or you guys are seeking more paid on-call firefighters. But also, if you did this letter before, what you did with last year's money, did you promise to do what you did, and you did, and what are you looking for this year? So again, those are things that can be included in these letters to help get out the word. But you have basically done something really, really well, because you've also delivered a message about recruiting and also prevention. The next one is talks about NOFO. Anybody know what I'm talking about when I talk about NOFO?
It's the notice of funding.
Opportunity, yep. Comes out every year with every federal grant. So I have a copy of just the part that the grant writer should have, not the 120 pages. So when you look at that, I just want to point a couple of things out for you. Notice how you could be hurt scored-wise. So it starts at page 60. Don't use this for this year because it could change. When you look in the far left column, you see there's M's and H's. Okay? H is high priority, right? The one with the M and H means that still a medium priority for local fire departments, but high priority for state fire training facilities. You look at that. So I would suggest highlight all the things that are high priority. Start to see if they match any things on your whiteboard. The next category is age, right? So when you look at the last bullet point on page 60, it says age. So when you look at long life, it's 15 to 20 years, right? Something has to be 15 or 20 years before consideration. Something that's short life is between 5 and 7 years. So you'll find interesting that ladders are long life, right? Ladders last a long time. Cameras are 5 to 7 years, right? So those things you're looking for meet those requirements, because if you ask for ladders too soon, you might score really, really, really low when the computer scores your application. So again, those are some examples here. So when you look at firefighting, basic firefighting equipment, it's a high priority, right? So look at those things. Okay. All right, next slide. Prep work. This is, for some of you guys and gals, might be easy, but make sure you have a DUNS number. Make sure you have an active SAMS number. Everybody here have an active SAMS number?
Yes.
Okay. If you don't, it's hard. It's hard to get, so SAMS is important. The FEMA.go, again, SAFER is going to be coming open here probably end of May, SAFER application. AFG application will be probably this fall. Again, that money's fully funded. But make sure that your SAMS number is activated. If you're going to do EMS stuff for the EMS grant, make sure your ERA Commons number is done. But these are just a little bit of prep work to do. And the next page, which is a couple of pages long, just letting everybody know what this is. If I get your email address back today from our marketing department, I will send out changes from last year's funding, NOFO, to this year's. I'll break it down in English. Portable radios, high priority last year. Will they be high priority this year? We don't know. Last year, radios, mobiles, and pagers were out, but they took mobiles and pagers away and left portable. So I'll send that out in English. So each one of those changes, that way if you get ready to apply for AFG, you can look at it and say, yep, I understand it, got it 100%. So it's a 3-page document you get out, 2 or 3, coming from our marketing department. Okay. With this, I know you guys said you guys took care of the financial side of it before, providing with those little check boxes they need for financial stuff. But I would tell you, if you know you're going to be applying, or your department's going to be applying for certain things, tomorrow when you go back, ask the officers and your quartermaster, whoever, if it's turnout gear, ask them if he can give you an inventory. Inventory, what we're looking for, though, is very important. Age, right? Condition, right? Does it still have life? Is a turnout gear still have reflective to lights, right? Because people are going to be on the highway, on the roadway, right? Those things. When you look at firefighting equipment, is the box fan they have their engine, the cord shared? So, example, when you look at how can we sell the idea of replacing ventilation fans? Again, is there any issues with the other one? I'll ask you, hey, what's wrong with the other one, right? Maybe it's too heavy, right? NPA and OSHA has a requirement. OSHA has a requirement, especially how much one firefighter can carry weight-wise, right? Doesn't meet that. So again, are there things in this application that we can do ahead of time to take away the stress? Because you're only going to have 30 days when they say go. So, but again, all this is mainly your inventory, some stats about your community. Again, how many civilians have died, been injured, et cetera, those things. All right. So we're going to flip through those and go to AFG scoring. Okay. Yes, AFG scoring has four major things on it. So looks like So pre-screening. Guess who's doing that screening, the pre-screening? Anybody have an idea who's doing it? Computer. The computer has a logarithm. So their database has a logarithm based on high priorities that we just told you. So if you kick in some medium priority items, it's going to lower your score. Based on life, if it's something you're asking, even if you had a compelling story why you knew ladders, you had a high-rise building on fire, ladders got crushed, fell into the fire, a person won't get to read it like us in this room and understand why. So again, make sure that your pre-screening data is correct. Peer review, people like us sitting in a room out east, reviewing it, looking at the application, make sure it makes sense, make sure that's what they're asking, and make sure that every one of their paragraphs is scored equally. Tech val, so if you say something in your application that, life's gonna get better, for example, because you're gonna do this or do that, being able to do more ventilated-driven fires based on having more fans on scene or having more extrication tools on scene to do extrication, they might send an email saying you've been scored high enough to be awarded, but we need to know some information. So prove what you're going to sue. And then basically read that NOFO document. The document's 120 pages long usually, so a lot of it has to do with the financial portion of procuring equipment, but make sure you read it and understand it. All right, so the next paragraph, or next page. You see there's 4 paragraphs highlighted? Any application you ever apply for, I would use these 4 points on every application. Financial need. I use a different word. I use distress today. Because again, 14% inflation, things are hurting. So our need for money based on our financial distress. It's worth 25 points of the AG application. How come you can't fund this project? Why can't you fund it? Right? So might be lower taxes. It might be not enough growth in your community, etc. What is it? Are you under tax caps? Did the government do something different to your taxing? Why can't you afford it? So why can't you get enough money to do it? And are you already in the arrears with other projects? What I'm saying there. Do you have a capital plan that shows you you got $10 million worth of projects in the next few years? That could be simple as I need a new fire engine. We need to build a new fire station. We need to modify. She said they have an old fire station. We need to remodel, or again, what's that cost? But everything that your fire chief or the divisions can tell you of equipment they need, we need to paint that picture that you might have 10, 20, $30 million or more of immediate projects to improve firefighter safety. Now, you might have 10 million in the bank, but what we just showed here? You're gonna be in the red, right? Because would I give you a $75,000 grant if you have $5 million in a project and you have nowhere to spend it? Would I give you that grant? Doesn't make sense. I should give it to somebody who needs it, right? So that's what I'm saying. Even though you have reserves, do you have a plan to spend that, right? So something you have to point out. Project description and budget. This one here is, you might be applying for, let's say you're applying, you're applying for 10 sets of turnout gear, head to toe. It'd be easy to put down 10 sets at $5,000 per firefighter equals $50,000, right? They don't want to see that. They want to see you have 10 sets of gear, a coat, $3,500, pants, X amount, boots, X amount, gloves, X amount, hoods, X amount, because they have a threshold built in. People in California can get $13,000 for a set of gear, and people in New Jersey only get 5, like we used to see back in the day for other things. So make sure you have that broken down. And what is the problem? Our turnout gear is old. We don't have enough to fit everybody. For example, if you don't know, the chief here knows, turnout gear has to fit you a certain way. So I know when new guys and gals come on, you give them a set to take to academy, old set sometimes. There's certain things about fitting. So we could look at your inventory and says 50%, 55% of your gear on average that I've dealt with is either don't fit properly or tattered and torn. So again, that's not accounting out of date. So we have a justification for those type of things. So what?
So are you saying like, so staggering that, it's like turnout gear, got 100 firefighters, you want to replace it, but you don't want to do it all at one time.
Yep.
You want to do 25% at a time for 4 years.
I would do, what I would do, the answer would be there, I would ask for one time everything you're going to need to fix everybody. So if it's all 100 sets of gear is in that condition, I would ask for 100 sets. I know it's going to be a problem for you later, because you're going to figure out, how are you going to figure that out if you don't have all of it old again? But I would tell you, you want to be 100% compliant with the grant application. So that means whatever I'm doing is going to fix the whole problem. They don't want you to come back to the well again. They don't want you to say, well, only 50% of our guys are going to be compliant, 50% are not. So, but only 80% of those need it. I'll only ask for 80% of that needed, 80 sets.
So what if you've already kind of set it up where you got your staggered that way,
Right.
or
Yep.
so because of budget reasons you did it that way?
Right.
Because that's what we did. So I would be 100% compliant if I only got 25% of the gear.
I would only ask for 25 to get you compliant. Now, so that, again, it's going through the test. Does it fit everybody properly? Is it tattered and torn beyond repair? Is the trim diminished as far as revisitability? And the other part is on the date, right? The other key word, just for everybody knows in here, they're going to start talking about PFAS. They already have. It's not a priority yet. I wouldn't be surprised you'll see PFAS being a priority to replace gear with PFAS in it, because there's been such a storm about PFAS. If you don't know, PFAS is required in the manufacturing turnout gear till last year by an EPA for water shedding reasons. So it wasn't something just somebody threw in there because it was less expensive to do it that way. So again, last year they mentioned it. So if you're going to replace your turnout gear, sir, I would say that you're looking at replacing your 25 sets based on all the things we just talked about, and also to buy our first or buy our additional or new sets that are PFAS free in your justification. Because it's not a priority yet, but they're talking about it. Make sure you understand that that's what they're going to do. And then with your 25 sets of gear, are you able to sustain it? So that means when you're talking about sustaining, and I don't care what piece of equipment it is, if it's SuperVac fans, SuperVac equipment, if it's PPE, if it's SCBAs, they want to make sure that you can sustain what you receive. So if I'm asking for turnout gear, do I have enough gear and washers and dryers to keep it sustainable? Or do I have a program where somebody comes in and grabs my gear and cleans it? You know, one of those companies. Same with SCBAs, do you have extended warranties? With some of the products that were represented here today, do they have a process where you can extend your warranty? Do you have a process where you have battery replacements in 3 years? Did you budget that in? So sustainability. So that way you're not left at, oh my God, we got to do all this later on. So for example, like fit testing and flow testing, right? I mean, do we have something built into that application that we might buy our own fit tester? We do it ourselves, save some money, all those things.
So you're talking about the sustainability, so we have the extractor, but we also, once a year, we do go professionally to things and do a lot better job than we can at home.
Right.
Do they have grants that help that sustainability?
I would build it into your turnout gear application. And when you talk about being sent out, I would talk about ozone cleaning. You have one here in Denver that cleans ozone. So it draws more out of it than what your standard care facilities can. Not that they're bad, but ozone cleaning adds another element to it. I know there's a facility here in Denver that does that. So, but yeah, I would add on there that you want to add, 25 sets a year for the next 3 years at ozone cleaning at this amount. And we're going to go over that number later, see if we can add stuff in. Cost benefit, who's it benefit? This is why I believe in this program so much. This is my only thing that drives me 100% to saying that you're going to be win or lose, cost benefit. Using chicken dinner, winter dinner. So looking at this being cost benefit, it's 25% of your score. DHS tells me that most people fail because they don't prove cost benefit. Okay, so this is how important it is. So I look at cost benefit being 4 things. All right. Ma'am, how many $100,000 would I give you enough fire prevention projects, equipment? Okay, so $100,000, we're going to use that number, okay? Okay, how many people does it benefit initially in your fire district area, fire response?
220,000.
Okay, that's my first number. So I'm going to do a paragraph on 100,000. How long do you think that equipment's going to last? And we're going to go over that a little bit. Just kind of keep that in your brain thinking, how long does that equipment last? What's a normal history replacement? Because again, so 220,000, right? Who do you auto aid with?
Who do we what?
Who do you auto aid with?
Oh, several departments.
So, and what their populations are, okay? Third, do you have a special population? And when I mean special, I mean, do you have a school, college, university, prison, a factory, a shopping area that brings, like Mall of America, bring 1,000 people, that you're protecting that you don't get any tax revenue or any special fees from? Resorts, casinos, right? How many people come to a casino a day, right? That's your special population. This is what's going to set you apart from, your other departments that are applying, because you're going to do that third paragraph. Now, fourth paragraph would be, do you have a special response corridor? We're called MABUS. Indiana's called the, I can't remember, the DHS response groups. Each, like 3 or 4 counties are grouped together. So, Southern Cal has wildland firefighting grouped up like that, like certain regions. So again, but the 3 paragraphs we just talked about with your guys' population would be a winner every day long as I feel you use it. and maybe you're already doing it. Because what I'm looking at is the cost per resident. I'm not asking for $100,000. I'm asking cost per resident over the life of that equipment. For example, turnout gear, $100,000, right? Good for 10 years. So every year it costs us $10,000 to have that, right? I take that population and say 200,000, now I'm down to 50 cents, right? So.
But we haven't addressed the benefit, we've just addressed we've broken the cost down.
Yeah, but-
How do we show that the benefit?
Benefit's going to be how much it costs per citizen, don't use the word citizen, per resident over the life of the equipment. So that's going to be the benefit. Now, the statement of effects, we're going to talk about what you're looking for. So the cost benefit, who does it benefit, and how much, who gets the biggest bang for the dollar, right? And so that's looking at your populations, based on your project, based on longevity, and based on longevity is either by what's already set by an NFPA, or what your normal history is. Like you normally replace something every 10 years or 15 years or whatever it is. Now, what we're talking about here, statement of effect, right? So again, we're going to go over an exercise with that. At the end, we have a spreadsheet, it'll make it probably clear. Mutual aid and auto aid, when we talk about special population, mutual aid is different than auto. Auto is automatically, so we can count that as part of this when we do our cost benefit, because we're going regardless they call us or not. We've already been toned because it's part of our automatic aid, so that's there. All right, the next slide talks about micro grants. Anybody ever applied for a micro grant? It's under AFG. You have a choice when you apply, micro grant or regular application. Micro grant, as of last year, was $75,000 or below. I don't have the newest funding yet for next year. It might be a little north of there, it might be a little bit more. That means your project cannot exceed $75,000. So when you look at things you can buy, there's a lot of things you can buy for $175,000. But when you look at that, this year the peer review was told anybody that uses a micro grant, they get 3 extra points. So for the idea, why do you think the federal government wants you to apply for smaller grants? For it goes along farther. So more people get rewarded, because most applications you look at being awarded are in the hundreds to 200,000s. If they can keep a few under 75,000, they're going to be able to give out more money. Okay. Okay. All right. So who would say their department needs a fire engine or a tanker or tender and equipment? Who lives in that lifestyle? It says we probably need something that drives and something that protects us. Just for you to know, we talked about this earlier. Under AFG, you can apply for 2 projects. Fire engine, equipment, training. So you kind of remember those things. So that being said, just remember they don't hurt each other. You could be awarded for one or awarded for both, or 0. If you're awarded for both, the problem is you're going to have your guys' population here, you're going to have to pay 10% match. So that goes up if you get awarded both grants. I would tell you, who has chief buggies? Behind chiefs, deputy chiefs, fire chiefs, are they newer? They really hurt this vehicle application out, because the average age of your fleet has to be 25 years.
But is that for solely owned, or do they factor in leased vehicles?
I don't know if I can't answer that question. I'm guessing it's going to be long as are you guys responsible for it? Then you guys, it's going to be that. So, but I'll ask that question. Yeah, I'll get back to you. So, you know, before you go, put that on your list. But I'll ask. But so, for example, if you had some DoD equipment, you can't count it because it's not yours. It's still owned by the department, because when you say you're done with it, they'll come get it. So DoD. So when you look at the eligibility of fire equipment and you want training, again, 2 different projects, both high priorities. So you might get one or you might get both. You might put in for a new engine and new equipment for the engine. Sad thing is you might only get the equipment, but you didn't get the new engine. So, but I would tell you that nice thing about if you have nothing else to apply for 2 projects, I always would recommend applying for an engine or a tender, whatever you need. Because when you don't get awarded for that part of the project, you have an opportunity to call the help desk and have your person assigned to you by your FEMA region call you. You say, can you tell me why I wasn't awarded? Might be simple. Your age of your fleets doesn't meet it. Might be if we had enough money, you would have been. You ran out of money. Because apparatus only gets a portion of this. Or it could be that you didn't articulate enough what's going to be better for your statement of effect. What's going to get better? What's going to get worse? Okay, next one, there are just some small bullet points. Again, develop a budget with all associated costs. So the gentleman here asked about cleaning. Is that going to be associated costs with the turnout gear? Yep. If you have battery-operated tools, rechargeable SCBA's, is that a cost down the road? You gotta buy new batteries, right? Some are buying them every year. Do you have to have certain testing done? Like if you wear an air pack, you have to be fit tested, you have to have flow tested the pack. Turnout gear has to be inspected once a year. Should be an advanced inspection. So there's a lot of things that we have to figure out in the budget. Determine a realistic need. Do you guys meet with all the department heads and come up with a list of things you need? Again, one thing is, when you do that, they're going to ask you in this application, if you are familiar with it, they've asked you if you've had a formal risk analysis. Have you guys had one? Okay. So, did you guys do yours locally or had somebody outside do it?
Before my time, I'm not sure.
Okay. So, usually a formal one's done by somebody that doesn't live here, doesn't probably live in Colorado, is hired by some organization to come in, and they come in and do a fair job of looking at interviewing a few people, looking at like, hey, you know, it might be a pipeline there might be a port there with water, a big river. But if you don't do it, probably annually you're probably doing it anyway, don't know you're doing it. Your officers get together, they have a meeting with our other department heads, behind chiefs, et cetera, and they come up probably with some things that have been issues, right? That's your risk. When you check that box, have you had a formal, informal, you put down your informal, they might ask you later on, do you have data from that, which means maybe somebody took notes and signed it. But everything that's on that risk analysis should be on that whiteboard to figure out how to fix that risk. So, all right. Again, in the red area are some things pointed out. Just organize. Make sure you're organized when you do the writing. The days changed from back in the day when you used to keep binders and tabs and all the documents, but you still need to keep those documents on either PDF on a USB or basically something saved on a PDF or on your drive or shared drive. But those important documents, because again, if you wrote a great story about your needs for your department, can I copy and paste that and put it in somebody else's application that wants a little bit about your organization? Like the organization was formed in 1922. It wasn't really originally Fort Collins Fire Department. Originally was this community was a gold rush, whatever it was. Is that going to change from grant to grant? No. You've already done a lot of the work, right? You've made a good story about your community and your fire department. Copy and paste. Same with financial distress. Is that going to change from application to application? Nope. So again, two or three paragraphs are already copy and pasted. So literally on some of your lunch hours, if you were bored and didn't want to do anything, you can fill out some of these smaller low-hanging fruit applications repetitively. Some are still snail mail. What was the one you had to mail off? Larry Foundation? Yeah. So some are still snail mail. They require you just to print it and mail it. Other ones are portal. So you usually get back a confirmation they got it. So. Okay. Next page, we're talking about phase 1 and phase 2. We talked about the scoring already. We talked about a micro grant. One thing they're going to ask you, do you have a new risk? Anybody know what a new risk is in your community? Has the call volume went up? If the call volume went up, that's new risk. Every time you put more firefighters on somewhere, it's a risk. Have they built a new trailer park? Have they built a new subdivision? Have they built a larger manufacturing plant or something that's not good for us to be around? Again, a new mission is harder to come by. Are you guys doing something today you didn't do yesterday, for example? Are you doing swift water rescue you never did before? Are you doing hazmat technical review, technical response? Are you doing high angle rescue? So is that something, your fire department doing something that you didn't do before? So that's a new mission. Very few departments have that. But new risks, a lot of departments have that. The last two bullet points are talking about if you're thinking about a fire engine or tender or brush truck. Average age of the fleet. You have to, and again, if your ambulance service is tied to your organization because they're your employees and your ambulances, that hurts your age of fleet too because they're replaced sooner because of mileage. So remember those things. And that whatever you're trying to replace, if you have something in reserves that's 30 years or older, that helps out the cause. Third paragraph, stick with high priority items on the AFG application. Don't mix like gear bags, flashlight bags, SCBA bags. Reason being those are medium to low high priority. You're gonna hurt your score. Okay. We talked about the new risk and mission already. Just again, define those with your department heads if they have it. If you've never filled out the application, they ask for your critical infrastructure, right? You can drive the area. You might already know it because a lot of people send in little envelopes every year what their bad things are they store. You can go to the internet. There's actually a site there. It's about 1 year backwards because they have everything caught up. And then internet sources. But the next page, which would be the next screen, shows you all the things that are critical infrastructure. So again, do you have things that produce power in your community? You have things that deal with communications, cell towers, right? And how many? Do you have things that deal with 911 towers? Do you have government facilities in your area? Post office, right? Everybody has a post office, right? Do you have schools? Do you have military or DOD base in your area? Do you have commercial livestock farms, right? Do you have places where they produce food like Tyson's, IBF, those things? Do you have water systems? So all these things that are on this critical infra is just part of what you can do for critical infrastructure. Again, if you do auto aid and your auto aid department has something really, really cool, like a nuclear power plant or power plant, note that. Because again, you might be the first ones there on auto aid. Okay. Next slide talks a little bit about your narrative, right? Towards the bottom are the three most important things that when you take it out of the slide. Reference local and national standards, right? National standards in NPA, they give you everything you need to know. OSHA, you can look at OSHA standards, but also how many firefighters have you had, if you're trying to prevent firefighter, trying to improve firefighter safety by buying new turnout gear, how many firefighters have been burnt, been injured, had cancer in the last 3 years? How many have you had a line of duty death because of cancer, et cetera, et cetera? Those are things you put in there. Note in there too, when you talk about statement of effect, how are you going to be able to sustain what you're asking for? Turnout gear, you're going to be able to wash it, care for it, send it out. Extrication tools, you're going to have a warranty program, you're going to have somebody in-house trained to know how to facilitate that. SCBA, same thing. You're going to be able to flow test, fit test. If you get an apparatus, are you going to have a driving course already installed in your fire department to keep the guys and gals driving safe? Do you have an extended warranty on your vehicle? Where is it going to be maintained? All those things. The next slide is just an example. You're asking for turnout gear, gloves, ask for a washer and dryer, but do not ask for the bottom, gear bags, flashlights, belts. Get those from another source, right? The next slide, you see there's 4 paragraphs again. Traditionally, I answer those questions when I'm writing a narrative. So project description, what's your problem? And how do you plan on fixing it? Financial need, prove the need. What's your tax base status? Again, why can't you handle the problem yourself? Are you below median income? Do you guys know that? You know how you find that out? Google, median income, put your zip code in. It'll tell you that like median income might be in the country 54% and you guys sit at 65. It could be below it, okay? So what is your median income? That's important when financial need, you really can't hammer people for more money if they're already broke, right? As far as taxes, et cetera, et cetera. Cost benefit is going to increase your interoperability with other agencies as well. So we'll help you with the cop shop, we'll help you with the highway department, et cetera, et cetera. We have a couple of examples. But then the statement of effects, the last one's all the bullet points. Again, what's going to get better? How are you going to fix the gaps? Who will benefit, right? AFG, you need to say firefighter safety is going to be improved. Also help with the rescue of civilians, et cetera, if that's what you're going to do. How long will it take to work? Again, anybody know how long it takes to get a new fire engine today? What's your guys' build schedule?
It's about 3 years now.
3 years. Okay, so 3 years. You got to note that in your application. Turnout gear was a problem too during COVID. And that was almost up to unheritable, 8 months for turnout gear. So again, not anymore, but again, put notes in there. The nice thing about AFG now, they're giving you a 2-year window of performance. Before it was always a year, so you have a little bit longer. I would tell you though, if you put in there your immediate need was turnout gear, immediate need was firefighting equipment to improve firefighter safety, should it take 2 years to get done? Be realistic. Because you already said it's going to improve firefighter safety, why would you wait? Right? Why I'm saying that is, if something happens and you can't get the equipment here in the 2 years, and you waited 1.5 years to get the committee together because life's busy, they might not approve your appeal. Because you said it was to improve firefighter safety. They know it takes 90 days to get turnout gear, maybe a few months to go through your whole financial process of doing all the bids, all that, et cetera, et cetera. So make sure that you're doing that. When you look at bids, I tell people that I'd be very careful about getting a quote or a bid for equipment for a grant. So how do you get the price? Because it's going to ask you, like when you look at your statement of effect, I did good market research. Reason being, if I had a quote here from, who's one of your major vendors out here, like Dingus?
Fire is one of our dealers out here, Becker Safety also.
So Becker Safety. If you had a quote for Becker Safety and reference that in your, when you came up with your cost, does it look like you excluded everybody out? And when you look at their process, they require 3 or more quotes or bids when you get awarded. And it doesn't mean you have to buy the cheapest. You have to justify why you're buying it. Okay. Okay, that's those 4 paragraphs. Again, the stuff on the next slide. Write a 1 page, no word limit, a little document on explain your community. Again, you might have to do a guided tour of community if you forgot some things are out there. Your members, your call volume, square miles, and what makes your department unique. What makes it unique? Why is it different from this department versus a department in another state? And do you have a capital plan showing like where your deficit is going to be if you did everything you're supposed to? Next slide at the bottom tells you in red, this is strictly from DHS, who funds SAFER and AFG. Why don't you get awarded? Not making a case for cost benefit. Not making a case for financial need. Why do you need the money? And asking to be funded for low priority items, which we kind of covered. Okay. Regional grant, anybody ever heard of a regional grant? So it's you and your neighbor, or neighbors, minimum of 2, so we can apply for a project, okay? It's actually a great process because you'll probably get awarded faster because you're doing more of a cost benefit because there's more people involved. You have to find somebody to be a host. So that host can now apply for their own AFG grant this year, so they're going to be a host. And all I say is be careful who you ask to be partners with, because if you don't play well in the sandbox together, it's going to be difficult to get this contract together beforehand, because you got to be a minimum understanding you're going to share the cost, and that you're going to basically be able to pick out a single vendor. So if Fire Chief A is sold out on Scott Air Packs, and that's the best thing since sliced bread, and the other one doesn't care, you can't only exclude everybody else out because of Scott. You got to have some type of scoring system, figure out why you picked the brand. It could be because their service, the regional, how close they are, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Regional grant, for example, the next slide has a picture of a training facility. It's mobile. AFG used to require that those training facilities are mobile. This is a class, phase 2. It's a Class A training facility. Again, as a regional grant, it's a high priority. Bring people here to train. Then the next slide is a regional grant. That's all for communication equipment. The 2 different grants there. Just shows you that, you know, again, things you build together to build more dollars for a project. When you look at interoperability, the benefit, as you were talking about, especially for radios, can we build that the departments and these departments that respond with us have some radio equipment they can talk to us on? Such as even buses for evacuations for active school shooters, et cetera. So. And then pay for money yet for hiring? Okay. Are you guys aware of it? There's 2. Yes, 2 programs. One is for hiring career employees. You cannot be because you're trying to replace retirees, et cetera. You get 3 years of salary and benefits. You guys decide how many firefighters per year, but it's 3 years of salary and benefits. At the exception of the 4th year is your responsibility now.
So only for new positions?
New positions. So.
As in like 100%, 75%,
Yep. So, and it only can be for salary and benefits. So, yep. So they'll fund with SAFER. They'll fund it 100%. So if you have $195,000 per firefighter by the time you do their benefits and all that, it's going to fund that for 3 years. But that your last year, you're out. So for inception of year 4, you're out. You can't pay for anything else. You can't pay for tuition. You can't pay for equipment. The other program, which will affect him directly, is SAFER has recruitment and retention. So not only can you do signs and marketing, reels, et cetera, you also can come and bring on, for 4 years, X amount of firefighters. And it pays their stipend, which is their paid on-call, pays for their turnout gear, pays for their education, tuition, whatever it is, and et cetera, for 4 years. So if you bring on this class of firefighters for this year, it will pay their 4 years of stipends for the next 4 years and pay for their initial set of turnout gear, their initial education, whatever the jurisdiction have an authority. If I came on the 2nd year, they're only paying me 3 years of it. If I came on the last year, I'm paying 1 year. But the idea is bring on more firefighters to bolster the response to 1720. It does pay, again, for signs that set out in front of your firehouses, social media reels, which I think are important, et cetera, et cetera. Anybody have a question on SAFER? Good program. Okay, next one says SAMHSA. That's your mental health organization, substance abuse. They funded a grant for EMS. I talked about it earlier. It's underserved, not enough applications. It's due in March every year by law. It requires the ERK Commons sign-on. It pays for, again, for participant protection. It pays for education, and it pays for equipment for to respond to overdose. There are two requirements are you have one mental health training a year, which could be online. It's not for the responder, it's for responding to somebody for de-escalation, whatever the case may be, cited delirium, whatever it is. And the other part, you have to have one Narcan training a year, which most departments do, because in their unknown medical response. It's great if you can include some stuff for your public too in here, in this application. So you're gonna put on some for public to know how to administer Narcan, et cetera, et cetera. So this could be a way to get people in for some prevention medication, et cetera. Okay. The next slide is statewide and federal-wide. When you apply for a grant, you get an application number. I recommend sending that application number if it's a state grant to your state senators and reps. Tell them that you applied for this, here's our application number. If you could send a letter of support, great. Federally, you have 2 senators and you have some congressmen. I would do the same thing. There is an example on the next page on what the letter should say. So that's an example of a letter to send to your local state and county, your state and federal reps based on what kind of grant it is. And there's an example of that letter. I would highly recommend everybody in this room once a year to send a letter to your U.S. senators anyway in late March. Here's what our needs are, because they're sitting at appropriation hearings. So what committees do they sit on? Are they sitting on the Department of Homeland Security? Are they sitting on FEMA? That's important. But the nice thing about when you send a letter to a U.S. congressman or U.S. senator, you will get a response. The nice thing about the response are either their aides or their handlers. It went down the hall to FEMA, DNR, et cetera, and they ask, do you have funding for this? And they might say, yep, here's who you apply for. The letter gets kicked back to you. The nice thing about it is you might already know 7 or 8 of those sources, but there's going to be some that you didn't know. For example, if you guys applied for HUD money for your station in repair, you guys got a big enough population for HUD. So have you guys looked at that? And again, it's not the easy application, but there are some funding for these populations for under HUD. DNR might have a forestry program for something you need to do to interface your metro areas with the urban interface with some of this grassland. So have you done that? So those are things that, again, I always use as an example is anybody watched the movie at a prison librarian used to write a letter to a senator, congressman. Finally, he got the books. He started writing 2 letters. Shawshank Redemption. So again, I wrote these letters before. That's how I'm really familiar with the SAMHSA grant, which is Siren. I would never have looked at Siren as being an EMS funding grant. They sent back there's going to be rural funding for EMS, and there's going to be urban funding for EMS under this bill. So again, the benefit of that for my community was like $571,000 over a few years. Generation I, nobody in here meets that. When you were born in the crib, was there internet already? But there's a lot of these people that they rely on these devices to fact check everything that we tell them in the fire service, EMS, in part of life. But have we used these people to our benefit and say, hey, can you find some URLs that match? Because like I said, when I was driving over here, I look at Bucky, the gas station. Yeah, they have a URL for grant funding. Waffle House does not. I was disappointed highly. They don't have one for fire service, I should say. They have for other things, for the communities they're in. So again, Generation I. So are we using these people? We're going to, next slide is a little bit about an exercise we're going to do. It's going to be a cost matrix. It's going to be how to get the bang for the buck. Hopefully it's going to answer your questions about benefit. I did leave an example of it in here. At the bottom is the English version of it. The last page is my contact information. Then can you switch over to the Excel? So this Excel document already has the formulas in it, so if you want it, I'll send it to you. If you have it for a live document, you can use it. Just put it on that sheet. So, all right, so we're looking for a few projects. Just kind of think about something that's going to be in your department area. Okay, we'll start first. You need turnout gear, sir?
What's that?
You need turnout gear?
Turnout gear?
Do you need turnout gear for your department?
How many are we looking at?
Yeah, how many do you need it?
We have 50 people in our department.
Yeah, and how many do you need?
Just say 50.
50, okay. All right, so. And we're going to do head to toe for boots, gloves, hoods, all that?
Everything.
Okay, so about $5,000 a set, is that fair? Okay.
Fair. Well, that's-
All right,
yeah.
all right. And then we know it's going to be good for 10 years, or maybe less, but 10 we can use because in a PA. Okay. How many people live in your community, your first response area?
How many on duty?
know, how many people live in your community?
28,000.
20,000. Okay, how about, who do you auto aid to? What's their population?
We auto aid to Springs, that's 600,000, and we auto aid to Falcon, and that's 30-something. I'm not sure on Falcon.
So 630,000. And how can you find out that information tomorrow? Email the chief. I like that better because I have it on paper, saying he told me it was 600,000. So, and then special populations. Do you have any of those things we talked about, like a high school, college, university, factory, warehouse that brings a lot of people in that don't really live there during the day?
Plus, we have the DOD and the airport to the south of us.
Right? How many?
Palm Springs Airport.
Yep. So, and how many flights a day? Right? How many people?
Oh, gosh,
You can find that out from their authority, government authority, tell you. So let's say I'm just going to say it's 50,000 throughout the year for both of those. Okay. Okay. You can find out the real numbers. Okay. So what's the name of your department again? It's
Cimarron Hills.
Cimarron Hills. Is asking for turnout gear to improve firefighter safety for 50 sets, to replace torn, tattered, out-of-date gear to improve firefighter safety at a cost of $5,000 each. Total project $250,000. Over the life of the equipment of 10 years set by NMPA, it's $25,000 a year. Based on our population of 28,000, our cost per coverage area per citizen is 89 cents per resident. With our additional auto aid response area, we're down to 4 cents per citizen over the response area with the auto aid. And with our special population, we stayed at 4 cents. So we're asking for 4 cents, right? We never got worse than 89 cents. I would like to see under a dollar. So at 89 cents, I can justify a second hood for everybody for cancer. So instead of buying 50 hoods, 100 hoods. And I'd drive my number up a little bit, but not a lot. If I didn't have a gear washer and dryer, I would also throw down to sustain the turnout gear, because look where you're at with your normal auto aid response, 4 cents. I can build that back up. I'm not talking him down, I'm building him up. Now, if he was $1.10, I say, well, maybe what can we do differently? Okay, so you understand what we're doing there?
What's that?
You understand what we're doing there?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm tracking this is DOD kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But we also have risk benefit analysis as well.
Right.
Side of the cost benefit.
And the need for the turnaround gear should have came out of your risk analysis, should have came out of that whiteboard. So, right. How much prevention equipment do you need?
We would love to have AEDs in all our city and county vehicles.
Okay, AEDs. How many is that? Ballpark.
Adding city and county, I'm not sure.
Yeah, for our jurisdiction, should we go with 100?
Sounds like a good number.
Do you know how much they cost?
1,500?
I'd say 25.
I was gonna say it's like 2,800, I
Okay.
think was the last one.
28 is fine. Okay. And based on your current history, how long are you going to keep them?
10 years?
10 years. Okay. Okay. What's your population?
220, is that right? I think so.
Okay. Well, how about your auto aid?
This I don't know.
I don't know about auto aid, but we usually for.
Okay. And you. Okay. How about, you said for county cars too, right? And municipal. So I would take all those populations, you provide them to them, and put them in that equation. So if it's
about 300, 320,
320, so let's put 320. And I'm sure you have special population too, right, with all those things. I'm just gonna throw 100, I know it's more than 100,000, based on what I've seen. So we don't really need that paragraph, but we're gonna include it. So so you're saying that's gonna be the
I think that should be
100,000?
rather than
Where 320 is at, put 100.
Sorry.
That's right. 100, yep.
Using spreadsheets is speaking my language.
Okay, so same thing. I would tell you that right now, AFG doesn't recognize 100% tier on AEDs. They do 12 leads. So that might change. So we have to look at this year's. But there's a lot of Fortune 500 companies looking for projects. So when you go to them, so do you have a company, a Fortune 500 company or big industry or a big warehouse in your area?
Anheuser-Busch?
Oh, yeah, you got Budweiser, yeah, perfect. So one thing I would for sure do, not only look for other, and I could send you some ideas, but I would go to Anheuser and have a sit down with their HR person, whoever their community outreach person is, and say, we're asking for 13 cents for your workers and their families to protect them in a cardiac event. That's a true statement. And it's also a shaming event. Now you want to dim it, but you're not asking for 280,000. You're asking for 13 cents for their employees and their family to have available of AED in the county, because we all know usually police officer gets there first, just the way it's stacked. So again, 13 cents. Could we ask for additional supplies? For we have backup AED supplies for the county sheriff, don't have to come out of his budget, or the municipal, so we could ask we don't have to buy them today, because we could say to everybody you're buying AEDs from, how much will additional pads cost? $58 a pair, or something like that, whatever the number is, and say you want, and how many cardiac events does your county have? I mean, do you maybe get enough for 50 more? But you could build that into your budget and easily justify it, and still be under where that dollar. But again, it's going to be hard to find a $280,000 grant application, but could you use Firehouse Subs for 40 of it? And again, they might love this project. Again, they fund fire and police. Now you're combining them both on the same application to improve the outcome for the fire department's medical unit. You're going to have an AED already applied, right? You're already going to have hopefully shocks applied. So again, there's a few other applications I would look at. You know, again, Anheuser-Busch is another one. Again, but there are some other ones. I can send you some URLs that are Fortune 500 companies that you paint a good picture, a good letter of need. Again, how much does it improve? Because somebody knows the stats, how many times you get to a call and no AED device was deployed. That's what we're trying to improve, right? Improve how many times the AED device was deployed by 100%. So that'd be a good statement. Okay. What would you have for a project?
We were currently looking for a station rebuild.
Okay. You know a price?
$15 million.
Don't forget back fees.
Honestly,
You don't
that's
spend it
pretty-
on capital, though.
Yeah.
All it is.
And the station, what's the history for a station? 50 years, 100 years?
The age of that station is, I think, 40 years,
Yeah,
but we're building for 50 to 75.
50, okay. 50, yeah. And your population is 220, just like that, right?
Yeah, you
220?
can just copy those down.
Okay.
How can I afford not to give you a station?
94 cents per resident.
We should ask for two.
I was thinking 15 million's cheap.
But yeah, so when you look at this, a couple of things, when you do your statement of effect, you've done good market research, right? Because you figure out you're going to last for 50 years. You have some idea on the cost. But when you look at it, 94 cents with your response to who you're going to respond to countywide, it's pretty cheap. And again, you guys meet the qualifications for HUD. I would use that as one of my statements, that 94 cents. HUD applications are not by any means easy, but you guys have already done some of the financial part prior for those. Have you guys applied for HUD for your communities? It also, I shouldn't speak. It also matters where your guys are at median income wise.
Sorry.
Like for example, the USDA has grant funds too. You guys applied for that. It's not that much, but they do have money for construction. State of Illinois just did $350,000 per station. Just to get them up some of the dates. But again, you guys might be hand-locked based on your economic condition, which it might change one day. Never know. Okay. All right. Do you have a loved one have a project?
Well, both of those are good. We need those too, but
Okay.
radios would be mostly because that's what they have today.
Yeah. So AFG will allow one portable radio per firefighter.
Okay.
So they took mobiles and pagers, the truck radios and the pagers, and moved it to a medium. But I'm hoping they move them back to high this application this fall, because it does make no sense to move a truck radio to medium priority when you're trying, because again, portable won't get very far.
Okay.
It's so interesting. 1985 was one radio per crew.
Yeah. Now it's one per person. Yeah.
And firefighters were about does the radio, only the captain.
So radios, one project. How many dollars you thinking? How many portables?
So about 100.
100. How many firefighters do you have?
We have 115.
Okay. We'll leave 100. You know how much the radio is going to cost? 9,000. 9,000. What's your life for the other radios? Do you guys keep them for 15 years, 10 years?
Probably 10. But, well, part of it is you're going to be out of sync with technology if you go along.
Ours are on the-
Yeah, you don't plan 20 anymore, that's for sure.
Yeah. All right, and your population?
It's about 120.
Wow. And how, are you guys the same county as the?
We're the same county, and then we also go into Boulder County, and Weld County, just a teensy bit.
For-
Yeah, but put the 200,000.
Special population, you guys have anything that's great, awesome, brings a lot of people?
We have the events at the ranch, so, yeah, I mean, probably 50,000.
Okay, so, I mean, this is a very doable AFG application.
Okay, that's good, because I just had to sit in a budget meeting where I'm like, I'm not finding this money.
Okay.
So
So.
you're talking about like for regional, so this is individual departments doing just for themselves.
Right, so if you add your neighboring department, it even gets better.
Okay.
So, especially the award number, the number of dollars you're looking at. So if you could justify somebody else in your application, your neighbor that touched the border, same radio. So along with the regional, for at the end of the day, you're going to still try everybody on the brother out and have a score sheet with reliable people. So it might end up who you wanted anyway. You did mention one thing, and I'm glad you brought it up. You go into another county.
Mhm.
So again, we talk about setting ourselves apart. When you look at that, when we look at that cost benefit, how many townships do you protect? How many uncorporate areas do you protect?
So that was a question I had earlier about, when the community had to be under a certain size. What's the definition? Because within, both of us, within our response areas, we have smaller communities.
Yeah. Well,
Can we- I mean,
you can't
that's
apply. You
fair.
can't apply for them unless they have their own EIN number. So if you're protecting them by contract, they have an EIN number. So like a neighboring department gave up, the fire department said, we just want you guys to cover us, which happens. They probably still can apply because they probably still have an EIN number. And who's doing their NIFRS report? Who's doing the fire reports? If they're doing them still, they just have you guys doing all the, the responses. You can apply, but no longer does their employees fall under them, nor does their NIFRS fall under them. They had to be included with you, which means you can't apply for the unincorporated areas. It'd be just you. I would tell you the ones with the populations that we talked about, it doesn't, especially the applications, look at them, they're not that hard to use. I still would apply. Because again, you can paint that picture, you have a unincorporated mud flap, Arizona or Colorado or wherever it is in your area, and you're taking up their response for EMS and fire, all incidents, et cetera, et cetera. So when you look at the end of the deal, have you guys do you guys get deployed, anybody here get deployed to the wildfires in LA? Okay. Do you think anybody from New Jersey got deployed there? No. But, so what sets you apart? What makes you different? So when you look at the cost benefit, the last thing you should say, again, might be 9 townships, 3 unincorporated areas, right? But you want to tell these people reading this grant, not only will my radios be used here locally in my auto-aid response, but also where else, and again, I think Amy was telling me, where else have you responded on a major incident well outside your area? Somebody in Wyoming, right? Some you guys responded to someplace in Wyoming for a major fire, might have stayed there 2 or 3 days, right? That's not your normal response, right? So any of those incidents you have. So for like me, my normal population, equipment's going to be used. My auto-aid is going to be used. Also, I've responded to X, Y, and Z fire in my state due to a state called up mandate because the fire was too huge for local resources. They couldn't backfill. And nationally, for example, going to LA, right? You guys went to LA, right? So we went to 2 hurricanes in New Orleans, Katrina and Gustav. So not everybody else can say that equipment can be used nationally. And you guys put down an example, LA fires 2024, whatever it was, 2025. Because again, somebody reviewing that and say, looking at your score and looking at everything else, they're saying this equipment can be used all over, right? That makes a difference. Okay. Any questions on this formula?
Can you apply that to regional grants?
Yep. Only thing you're changing is the population. So if the population for your regional now is you and whoever, and then if they have different auto aid, because it might be farther out, you and their auto aid would be the same. Not the same, but be added on, because you just can't duplicate the same communities. And then for our special thing, they might have a prison, they might have a college, they might have a university, they might have an airport, they might have something where people come there every day. I mean, you start thinking about, these airports, how many people come in and out, like Denver, how many people come in and out of Denver every day? Find out by the government authority, hey, what do you think the estimate is? They know people in and out. Right, so add that to your total. So pennies on the dollar where you want to be. If you get too low on your pennies on the dollar, I always tell you to build your project back up. So again, if you're applying for 10 sets of extrication tools, you come in at 24 cents, I tell you, how many trucks you got? 2? I'd buy for two more for the heavy road equipment, et cetera, et cetera.
So I see you use the population, but I'll use drones for example. You know, like going out and doing field mitigation projects. And you're going out there, and you used to go out and just one project would probably take a couple of weeks to do it. With the drones, you get out there, you can fly them, then you only have to go and pinpoint those hot areas, if you will. And you go over there, and then you're gonna get those, and flag the trees, whatever. And you get the 14 days, you get it down to 3 to 4 days. I mean, that's right there, it's just man hours.
Right.
You're saving a lot of money just overhead.
Right. And I would gear it towards response. How many people are those drones going to respond to? Could respond to?
So not for field mitigation.
No, I would response, like just like you would
You know,
do.
Texas uses both, but they have it combined of the sheriff's office and fire department.
Right.
And they're actually, they can get out to especially like when down in Springs, we got the East Ellicott and all those, and it's just the plains. You can get out to a site, you can do a size it for the units, you can get there, you'll know what your call shots are on the units you need.
Right. Yeah. So when you want to do the benefit of, I would go by your population you're going to protect. And if it's your initial, and then what your secondary, and maybe a third. And it could be a fourth. I mean, because again, if you have a statewide response agency, you could have another paragraph. I would say that,
So response, not the mitigation side.
yeah, response population, yep. And again, anybody here, you guys have drones in your fire service?
Yes.
Okay, so there is a benefit to them, right? So quick, right? Size up like you talked about, finding people lost, dementia, whatever the case may be, babies. But there is a benefit to them. But the statement of fact, what's going to get better?
But we use
More
response
response.
for the drones, what do you use for a fire prevention trailer or fire extinguisher?
So FPNS, I would use for your fire extinguisher trailer, et cetera, et cetera. There's a company out every year that sends something out about some statement of effects. They're really good about it. But again, if you look at firehouse subs, $40,000 they're capped at, you can buy a real nice fire extinguisher prop. And then you're limited. You can't apply for 2 more years. But then you start looking at Rob, Peter, Pay, Paul. Can you get enough money from Walmart, Buc-ee's, and some other places to buy another prop you need? The answer is, yes. But the FPNS grant should be out any time, the Notice of Funding Opportunity. I just have to be very careful what you say, what age groups you're going to use for it, because they'll be done. Okay. Any other questions? Is it terrible?
It was really helpful.
Okay, well, I know everybody looks confused, so. But I would use this. I've used this, and this is where I believe. And again, getting away from federal dollars, if we can go in and show a corporation we're only asking for 14 cents, and they have money, we're not asking for 250, we're asking for 14 cents to help. And we're not going to come back to the well. I mean, we also, we're not going to come back next year and say we need more, right? This is a lifetime project in your name.
With the changing landscape of grants and really financial models in general right now, there's a lot of agencies that are going towards having like a grant coordinator or whatever. Have you seen any benefit of sharing those between agencies? Or have you heard of it?
I know in municipalities in Illinois, they have a league. They have grant writers available. You pay a fee. I just know that you probably need to find, again, whatever field you're going to be going into. Because a person that writes for the whole municipality, he might not be good at writing fire grants. Vice versa, he might not be good at writing grants for the state DOD program, IDOL, or through the Department of Transportation. He might not know their language either. So I don't think one source is always the best source. So there's some very good grant writers out there that work for big municipalities. They're going after the 10 to 100, $100 million project, where some of the ones we're talking today are 30. They don't bother with the low-hanging fruit.
Were you asking specific to writing grants or also coordinating? Because we have that need too.
Kind of coordinating more so, because we're losing our person that kind of facilitates a lot of those relationships for us, so I think it needs to be that higher level.
Right.
And if we can share that with like the police department or someone else who like is under the hat of public safety, that's already a much more narrow lane of focus.
Yeah, I think the narrow lane focus is good, because a lot of that too, like even your EMA office, right? You know, because they have a type of source of funding that fire and EMS and police can't get, so. Who's doing all the grant management then? Who's doing the management, facilitating? Okay, so even though you have a coordinator, you're still doing the management part?
We don't have a coordinator.
Oh, you do not?
I'm
Okay.
arguing for a coordinator.
Okay. Okay. Well, I think you want to be successful, you probably have to have somebody that's gonna be going to that whiteboard every day, probably, right? Do you have time to do it every day?
I don't have time.
Do you have time to do it every day? So,
I'm one deep in my divisions. And I said divisions.
so the city, I worked for the Fire Protection District, the city where we encompassed, they hired me to be that position, but I'm waiting for department heads to bring me projects. They want, because they don't know where to go. You know, so, you know, department heads are not bad people, they just have a long list of needs, but where do we point them to? And then if they point them to that, do we point them to, and I highly encourage, if you never did a grant application, don't feel very good about it, I would always recommend hire your first grant writer and get a picture. They're gonna leave you with a good picture that you probably didn't, because their expertise in the field of writing them, that you probably would never been able to facilitate it on your own. I mean, there's a lot of people like me, I'll review your grant all day long, but I don't know if I can insert what you want me to do without hiring a good grant writer. Hire a grant writer, have them do at least one application for you, not a low-hanging fruit one, you know, something that's gonna get a little bit banger for the buck, and then you will have some cookie cutter for your own district, your own responsibility.
The trouble is after you get the grant managing.
Right.
Keeping
Yeah.
track of all of that.
Oh, yeah, because the AFG, you have 2 reports due. You have a performance report at 6 months. You have one a year, but now they grew that to 2 years to allow you more time, so now you have 4 reports. Nothing might have changed. You might have been done in 1 year. They still require those 2 reports. And then you have to file SF 425 that shows that you used all your money, you didn't make any interest off their money, blah, blah, blah. And then the EMS grant I talked about, it gives you the same thing. It has to give a 6-month report, like you brought on 4 EMTs or sent 4 EMTs to be paramedics, and what challenges do you. So there is somebody at grant management. Now, I would tell you, both in AFG and Siren Grant and SAFER, there's a line item for project director. So.
Is that separate of any de minimis request?
What's that?
Is that separate of any de minimis request?
No, don't write an application. So if you want a captain on one of your ships to be in charge of recruiting and retention, you can pay part of his salary and benefits out of this grant. If you want to bring on a part-time person, or if it's going to be a huge SAFER thing where you're bringing on 24 people, there's room in there for a project director, because somebody's going to have to keep track of this. For example, if you're doing the AFG grant, they want to know, did you buy the equipment? Did all your problems get solved? The statement of effect. Did you, everything you asked to get done, and what roadblocks you have? There's certain questions they ask. But then again, who's going to keep all your receipts? Copies, who's going to submit for your payments? Because AFG and SAFER requires you to spend the money first and send back a reimbursement. The Siren Grant, which is EMS, you can spend the money as long as you're not making, you can ask for the money as long as you're not making entrance of it, where you can prepay or pay on time without having to wait the 3 to 5 days for AFG. But there is a lot of work. Because if you're going to keep equipment over $5,000 federally, you have to, there's another report, it's a tangible report, you have to fill out a tangible property report. Somebody's going to have to do that. So if you got some stuff that was on $49.99 and below, who cares, right? But if you got equipment that was 5,001, like a gurney, you got to request to keep it. Now, they're probably never going to take it away from you because they have no warehouse to put that stuff, right? But you have to ask to have it, keep it. Those are all reports you got to do. And there's different forms. There's, you had SF 424, and there's an A, and there's a 425. But so somebody has to do all that work. Throwing it with your normal job, if you're doing already buried, it probably won't be good. But most people in the grant business are really familiar with those forms. But they don't have the data. You still have to provide the data.